The EOS community should consider the introduction of voter rebates from BP candidates to introduce free market pricing to block production, drive more value back to token holders, and increase voter turnout. Unenforceable rules only hurt the compliant. Brendan Blumer. Welcome to EOS Weekly. 2019 started out with a bang for the EOS community. On New Year's Day, Brendan Blumer sent out this tweet where he's proposing the EOS community reconsider the current stance on vote buying, that we embrace it instead of trying to hinder it as an illegal act. Vote buying is currently forbidden according to Article 4 of the Constitution. This sparked heated debate as people in the EOS community tend to have very strong opinions on the vote buying issue. Many see this rule in the Constitution as an essential element, potentially the most important element, towards keeping EOS from devolving into total chaos. And seeing Brendan, the CEO of Block.one, propose we reverse course on this matter caught a lot of people off guard. What are Brendan's intentions here? Is he intentionally trying to destroy EOS? Some people were actually accusing him of this type of thing in their responses, as if EOS was some sort of enormous pump and dump scheme. Alright, we're going to dive deep into this vote buying discussion, but before we do, we've got an important announcement to make. If you caught our last few episodes about EOSForce, you'd know that we've been trying to find one of our known, trustworthy BPs who'd be interested in being a BP candidate on EOSForce. Someone to help bridge the communication and cultural gap that we're currently encountering. Well, we're very excited to announce that EOS Sphere reached out to us to let us know that they are making preparations to be a BP candidate on the EOSForce chain. EOS Sphere is located out of Australia, but as their name implies, they are establishing a global presence, taking up BP candidacy positions on all the major chains, the EOS mainnet, Warbly, Telos, and now, coming soon, EOSForce. This could put EOS Sphere in a strategic position to help facilitate IBC implementations once the time comes. If you check out EOS Aloha's voter proxy research portal, you'll find that EOS Sphere is currently in 10 of the top 20 registered proxy voting lists. This is an unusually high percentage and goes to show the caliber of this block producer and the level of trust the community has in EOS Sphere. So, as EOS Sphere ventures into BP candidacy on the EOSForce sister chain, let's rally behind them and get them into an elected spot. If you have questions about how to vote for EOS Sphere on the EOSForce chain, or on any chain for that matter, here is their Telegram channel where you can reach out to them directly. Alright, let's dive into our main topic now, which is this vote buying discussion. In order to cover this vote buying issue in a fair way, let's back up and start by identifying the problem. What problem are we trying to solve with this no vote buying rule here? Ultimately, the most important thing this rule is meant to bring about is the prevention of BP cartels from forming. Vote buying, together with whale voting and multi-node BPs, these are the conditions and behaviors that have the potential to lead to the formation of cartels. And as we all understand, cartels are a great danger to DPoS blockchains. When BP cartels form, we risk running into censorship issues, or even worse, cartels could use their supermajority vote to freeze accounts maliciously, use pseudo powers, or even vote to change the behavior of the system in ways that are not in line with token holders' desires. This in turn means that cartels can lead to people losing trust in the blockchain, and loss of trust is the final death blow to any blockchain. Now, there is a secondary issue that vote buying, whale voting, and multi-node BPs can also lead to besides cartels, and that is that low value add BPs can end up in the top 21 elected spots, meaning these behaviors here can lead to a set of BPs in the active spots which are not the ones adding the most value to the network. This is a concern, but it's secondary, because while this situation with low value BPs in active spots isn't ideal, this alone won't kill EOS. Cartels, on the other hand, can in fact actually destroy a blockchain. So let's go off the assumption that the underlying problem Brendan was trying to solve with his suggestion here is the actual greatest threat, the cartel issue. Knowing that DPoS blockchains are susceptible to cartels, there are 5 different strategies EOSIO blockchains are currently experimenting with in order to make their chains cartel resistant. They are enforcement, incentivizing all voting, incentivizing informed voting, favoring informed voters, and capping whale voting. These are not mutually exclusive. Different chains are or will be experimenting with different combinations of these. As we quickly go through each of these, we'll use this symbol here to represent the uninformed voter, and this here to represent the informed voter. As an example of an uninformed voter, think of somebody who has bought EOS as an investment because they heard some good things about it. But to this persona, EOS is really just another crypto in their portfolio, and they'd have a hard time naming a few, if any, BPs, and wouldn't be able to tell you the difference among them. This persona here represents the informed voter. This person might be running a dApp on EOS, or it's someone who follows along with what's happening on Twitter or through YouTube videos like yourself. This person may even venture into Telegram chats here and there. This informed voter persona is aware of the BPs and knows the differences between some of the proxies as well. The current state of the EOS mainnet, and all sister chains for that matter, is going to look something like this. The vast majority of token holders are uninformed. Nobody knows the exact percentages here, and our personas are an oversimplification of the many varieties of voters out there. But this graphic here is showing a ratio of about 20% informed, and 20% is probably in the right ballpark. If anything, this 20% is generous, but for the sake of our conversation here, it doesn't need to be exact. Now, the good news is that over time, as an EOSIO chain matures, the proportion of token holders who are dApp builders will grow in relation to the investors. And in general, the dApp builders will be more informed than the investors. Currently, the vast majority of token holders are investors. But as time goes on and dApp builders gradually purchase ownership from the investors, the quality of BP elections will naturally enhance. More dApps will mean a greater voter turnout and also a greater percentage of informed voters. So, the good news is that assuming the chain is successful in drawing in dApps over time, the trend will be towards becoming increasingly cartel resistant. But the bad news is that it's going to take several years to get to this healthy point. And during these early years, when the populace is mostly uninformed and voter turnout is relatively low, EOSIO chains are at risk of falling prey to cartels. So, going back to our 5 strategies for keeping cartels at bay, many have already discounted enforcement as unrealistic. But to be fair to all sides of the argument, it's still early, and perhaps we haven't tried hard enough on this front. Enforcement in this context means keeping the no vote buying rule in place and attempting to enforce it somehow. The one enforcement method that we naturally have with DPoS chains is the act of voting itself. That is, for the community to vote out any BPs involved in nefarious behavior. But this assumes we have an engaged community that is informed and votes enough to offset whale voting. Thomas Cox described an idea recently as to how enforcement could be carried out. He described having a delay implemented where BP pay is held outside of their account for a certain amount of time. And if fellow BPs become aware of some bad actor breaking certain rules, that delayed pay could be burned. There's a link to Crypto Tim's interview with Thomas below where he describes this idea. So far, we haven't seen much success in BPs self-policing themselves in this way, but perhaps something like this could work. The next method is to incentivize all voting. By this, we mean to incentivize as many token holders to vote as possible, regardless of whether they are an informed voter or an uninformed voter. Rex is the best example of this, and a lot of people in the community have high hopes that Rex will bring more health to BP elections with a greater voter turnout. Just to be clear, getting paid for voting is a side effect of Rex. The actual purpose of Rex is to enable token holders to lend out their share of network resources, profiting from it in the process. But to help increase voter turnout at the same time, the requirement has been put in place such that token holders cannot participate in Rex unless they vote for at least 21 block producers. This surely will cause some increase in voter turnout, and some of that increase will inevitably capture some informed voters in the process. But we shouldn't get our hopes up too high that Rex will be our cartel killer, because Rex does not do anything to help ensure that thought is put into the voting selection. Uninformed token holders can haphazardly vote, and they will get paid the same dividend as the informed voter, who is voting with the same number of tokens, regardless of the quality of their selections. So, we'll see. The Rex code is nearly complete, so we should have some real data to look at in the months ahead. This brings us to our third strategy, incentivizing informed voting. This is what EOSForce is attempting to implement. Their tokenomics model is set up in such a way so as to encourage token holders to make informed block producer selections, where voting for and helping to elect an underappreciated BP into an active spot will earn a greater dividend than the voter who attempts to take a shortcut by selecting a BP who is already at the top of the list. If something like this EOSForce model works, it would have a positive impact on voter turnout like Rex does, but with the added benefit of incentivizing uninformed voters to educate themselves, where if executed correctly, this would result in a greater percentage of informed voters. Brendan Blumer never mentions EOSForce by name in his tweets, but what he's describing sounds very similar to the EOSForce model. And keep in mind that Brendan is based out of Hong Kong, and EOSForce has more of a presence in China than anywhere else. So it would be surprising if Brendan wasn't familiar with this sister chain. Again, like Rex, it's too early to say if EOSForce will be successful with their voter dividend incentive model, but we'll be learning a lot from EOSForce in the coming months. The fourth method is to favor informed voters. In any community, you're going to have people who are actively engaged in the policy discussions and volunteerism and social gatherings. And then you'll have your more passive members of the community who keep to themselves a bit more and are a bit less engaged, a bit more reserved. This is natural. The same is true whether you look at a local town or village, or if you look at a blockchain community. When it comes to blockchain communities, some members of the community will actively be using their EOS tokens, actively using and trading their DApp tokens. They'll be engaged in discussions on Telegram and on Twitter. And then there will be others who are more comfortable on the periphery, holding their tokens idly in their accounts and watching from a distance. Currently, with delegated proof-of-stake DPoS, we only take into account how much EOS an account holds when determining how much voting power that account should have. Stake and voting power are directly correlated. They go up and down together. DPoS doesn't take into account at all how engaged the token holder is with the network. They're both treated the exact same when it comes to voting power. All that matters is the token count. But imagine if we could bring other factors besides token count into play. Imagine if we were able to capture information on the account usage activity and even social activity, and use this information to give the engaged token holders more voting power over the non-engaged token holder, even for two token holders with the same number of tokens. This is the idea behind Delegated Proof of Importance, DPOI. DPOI gathers data from a social network built on top of the blockchain and utilizes the account usage data and social data to more heavily weigh the votes coming from the more engaged community members. If well executed, this has the potential to bring a lot of health to the BP elections, and ultimately making for a more healthy set of BPs in the active spots. EOS is our first EOSIO blockchain that has replaced DPoS with DPOI. The social network on top of EOS that will feed social data back into the DPOI consensus algorithm is U.Community. This EOS chain will be a great experiment, a great learning opportunity to see how well the DPOI model performs in terms of cartel prevention. The final item in our set of 5 strategies for cartel prevention is capping token count on whale accounts. This is in reference to the approach Telos took with their Genesis snapshot, where they capped the total token count at 40,000 Telos. Anyone who participated in the EOSIO and purchased more than 40,000 EOS have started out with a max of 40,000 Telos tokens when the Telos network launched. The purpose of this cap is to lessen whale influence coming out of the gates and make for healthier BP elections. Again, like our other strategies, it's too early to say what sort of impact this will have. To zoom out for a second and look at the history of mankind, for some reason there is a tendency in this world for wealth to accumulate into the hands of the few. It's unfortunate that it works out this way, but this is the reality we're dealing with. And in some ways, this is the exact phenomenon we're all fighting against with these blockchains that we're building. During these early days, while the Telos token price is still low, it's a vulnerable time where new whales have the potential to form on this chain. We'll see how this all plays out. The Telos cap may help, at least in the short term, but this alone cannot be relied upon to make for a cartel-resistant chain. And again, as we mentioned, these strategies are not mutually exclusive. As you can see here, Telos is trying multiple different strategies simultaneously in order to prevent cartels from forming. Alright, now that we've covered the 5 strategies, let's go back to Brendan Blumer's tweets. Discussions have been quite heated coming out of this tweet storm, but this would be a good time for the EOS community to take a deep breath and be humbly open to some different points of view. Expect to see some long-form posts from block producers and others in response to Brendan's tweets, and expect Block.one to put out their own long-form content to better explain their stance on the matter. It does not appear that Brendan is suggesting that we keep everything else the same and just make vote buying legal. Block producers are not in a profitable situation at the current token prices, with only 1% inflation going towards their pay. Many have outright rejected Brendan's voter incentive idea because they are assuming BP pay would stay at 1%, which isn't providing enough block rewards for BPs to pay themselves in the first place, let alone pay out meaningful rebates to voters. But Brendan does know this, and so what you'll see is that Block.one will have more of a holistic approach when they clarify their proposed solution. Please stay open-minded as this discussion unfolds. This will be an ongoing community discussion, which will likely go on for the next several months, if not longer. Keep in mind that the world we are building with EOS is a tokenized world, one where people can earn tokens for doing everyday activities, such as working out, filling out surveys, creating music, writing restaurant reviews, you name it. And the tokenomics models of these EOSIO chains are still in their infancy. They will mature over time, just like how Google's search algorithm has matured over time. Let that sink in. Our tokenomics models for how we run these EOSIO chains will someday approach a similar level of complexity when compared to Google's search algorithm. We need to be of the mindset that there is a lot of improvements to be made with the current early version of the tokenomics model in our chains today, and that over time, we will put as much thought, effort, energy, and resources into our tokenomics models as Google has put into their search algorithm. It'll be like going from a Model T to a Tesla. It's not a crazy idea to incentivize the behavior you want in your system. Let's repeat that. It's not a crazy idea to incentivize the behavior you want in your system. This is Tokenomics 101, and we definitely want to encourage informed voting. So in this respect, Brendan is not far off base with his recent statements. Not at all. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. We'll help you stay current on EOS as this revolution unfolds. Thanks, and we'll see you next week right here on EOS Weekly.